And with newer technologies, as we've seen come along over the past 10 years and more of the web-based type approach, VAMS has really lended itself towards being able to do more than just be an Excel spreadsheet to track your new product requests that are kind of coming through the door.
Without supplies, there's no surgery. Without products, there's no patient care. Welcome to Power Supply, the healthcare supply chain podcast focused on helping you navigate the intricacies of logistics, purchasing, contracting, and supplier relationships. Each episode, we speak with healthcare executives, supply chain leaders, and innovative entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the loading dock to strategic sourcing, from buyers to the C-suite, and across the enterprise, we tackle the real-life issues impacting the healthcare supply chain. Whether you're tuning in for conversation or inspiration, we're glad you're here. You're just in time to hear it from the source and stock up on insight. So sit back and plug into Power Supply.
On this Vendor Spotlight, we speak with Stephen Kinsella, president at Data Leverage Group, LLC. And today we are going to be talking about automating workflows for your value analysis process. And that's where the Data Leverage Group started with their VAMS solution, but it's grown to be so much more than that. And Stephen has a great deal of passion and vision and a very client-centric approach to the development of their solution. And he's going to be telling us a lot more about that today. We're going to be right back with Stephen Kinsella, president at Data Leverage Group, LLC.
A production of 17 Studios, you're listening to Power Supply.
Joining us now is Stephen Kinsella, president at Data Leverage Group, LLC. And Stephen, I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite a while. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So I've gotten to know your company a good deal, not only through this process of, just setting up this conversation that we're going to have today, but just learning also about some of your strategy and goals for 2022. And I know we're going to share a lot about the company as we move forward in this conversation and really the direction. But I thought as we get started, I may already know, but our audience may not know what you all are doing at the Data Leverage Group. So can you talk about the company for us for a little bit?
I'd love to. So Data Leverage Group is a company we've been focused on developing workflow solutions for about 10 years now for value analysis and supply chain operations throughout the country. We typically started early on as a value analysis centric workflow solution, but we quickly found that the more we talked with our clients and the more that we built out our tool called VAMS, we quickly started to notice that VAMS had this great workflow applicability across the different silos of supply chain and other workflow areas.
Yeah, I think listening to the customer is so critical. And sometimes you might miss an opportunity, right? Like you have this tool, but you don't always see all of the potential applications without speaking to the folks that are using that tool. And it's also because they're oftentimes sitting in their day-to-day jobs and they still have these gaps in these other areas that you might not be aware of because you designed it to be a certain way. And then they're trying to find ways from their existing solutions and platforms that they have in place to solve a problem or a gap. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But I think listening to the customer, has helped you evolve and drive the development of your technology. Am I correct when I listen to what you just said?
Yeah, that's a great word, evolve, because we're consistently evolving our technology and listening to the client or clients. We have a user group. So when I say clients, we collectively get together as a group as well. But back to your point, it is an evolving situation. The technology's evolving, the workflow, the needs, the general needs of the client are always evolving. So although it's a challenge, it's a good challenge to be listening to the client and constantly making our program and platform better just by listening to the client and challenging ourselves to meet their challenges.
It's interesting. We're going to talk more about how you pull the clients together to really drive the development, to kind of piggyback off of that. But it's really, VAMS is really built through their lens. And we're going to talk more about how that happened as we kind of go into the early stages, right? And the state of the market. So as value analysis kind of took off, how did the industry change at the same time? And what were some of the evolving needs that started to come up for your clients, over that period of time where they said, hey, we need help with this? What was it that they needed help with?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, because early on when we first started, things like the project management office 10 years ago really wasn't quite around at that point in time. And we're seeing more of that. So over the past few years, what we've been seeing is more of a project management / workflow approach and rigor to our clients and their needs. So we've really seen the marketplace evolve from, hey, could we just have a new product request form so that we can organize our new product requests, to, hey, you know what? We need to manage these as projects. We need to have a workflow, and we need to have a platform where everybody's singing from the same sheet of music. We're quite a ways down the road today with those characteristics that we're seeing in clients today that weren't quite there 10 years ago.
You said sheet of music, and I want to say spreadsheet of music. And it was really a very manual process, right?
Yeah, it certainly was early on. And in many instances today, there are still operations that live and die by that Excel spreadsheet. And that was certainly the early approach, but it was a very static approach too, right? And with newer technologies, as we've seen come along over the past 10 years, and more of the web-based type approach, VAMS has really lended itself towards being able to do more than just be an Excel spreadsheet to track your new product requests that are kind of coming through the door. It's become more dynamic, and the technology has allowed us to do more things, like, for instance, sending out alerts, including other folks within the project. So the technology has allowed us to do many more useful things, such as email alerts, bringing different disparate groups of folks together as a team within a platform, providing fuller visibility, whereas an Excel spreadsheet doesn't quite allow you those same functionalities, if you will.
Well, a lot of the things that supply chain has to do has really operated in silos. So I think what you're describing is more of an integration of all those various workflows, because they're not identical. They all have their own unique nuances.
Yeah, unique both within the supply chain itself, but also across different clients. Each workflow can be vastly different between clients, and that gets back into the flexibility of our tool, the VAMS tool, where we really allow the client to roll up their sleeves, and we work with them to really customize the tool in such a way that it's really looking and feeling and closing the gap on all their different workflow areas where they really need the most help.
I don't think I fully understood that. And what you're saying is the solution itself is flexible so that it's not your workflow process that they have to follow. It's a tool that allows them to build their processes into the VAMS solution. So I've heard you use the term codifying workflows or codify their workflows. How does that relate to that flexibility in the context of this conversation we're having right now?
Sure. So each operation that we've worked with between clients, every operation is unique, right? Every client has certain needs. They're good at certain things, but they might need extra help in other areas. They may have a weak spot or a bottleneck in their workflow, their current workflow. We work with the client to understand where those needs are, where are those gaps, and that really becomes the personality of the client itself. What's their workflow personality? Then we work with them to actually customize the VAMS tool. There's a lot of customization points, whether it's workflow milestones or actual tasks that need to get done, various dependencies upon those tasks. So there's a whole slew of customization points that VAMS offers, and we begin to just deconstruct the client's workflow one little bit at a time until we have everything built into the VAMS tool itself. It's what's pretty neat about that. It becomes very reflective. If we've done a good job, it becomes very reflective of the client's actual workflow that they're working with today.
I think you've already spoken to this quite a bit, but what really makes the VAMS solution and Data Leverage Group different than the other solutions out there for value analysis? And I think this is more of a philosophy. I realize the technology is also different, and you'll tell us that, and you've already spoken to it in many ways as we've started this conversation, but I think there's a philosophy behind it as well.
Yeah, our philosophy is really about adaptability. We really want the client to really be able to take advantage of all the adaptability pieces of VAMS, because that's really the philosophy. Is we don't want VAMS to be looked at as an out-of-the-box rigid solution that the client has to force their workflow into. It's quite the opposite. We try to look through the lens of the client and from their point of view, and then we take their workflow and we figure out how to adapt the tool to meet their workflow itself. So it's almost an opposite approach to software solutions that you might see out there. A lot of competitors or workflow solutions that are out there try to force everybody into a one-size-fits-all. VAMS is the opposite. We have those customization points built so that the clients never have to think that way.
So what about scalability with that? Because I can see if you've got, a solution that is very, I don't want to say rigid, but very structured around another process or a workflow that's sort of established by who you're, sourcing that solution from. Does this make changes much more easy as the organization changes? And does that make the VAMS solution more scalable? I mean, one of the biggest things we've seen over the last 15 years is just all of these hospital systems and the acquisitions and the mergers. And I can see whereas healthcare organizations are going through that their workflows would have to change substantially. And so I've got to think that ability to configure it and customize it makes it more scalable?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. VAMS is a very scalable product, and we like to think that it scales with the client. Okay, so what clients immediately find is, wow, they kind of have this treasure trove within VAMS of a workflow tool that they can really kind of use like Play-Doh and configure and customize to really meet their workflow need. I kind of mentioned that in the last segment for sure. So once they find that, they start to go through their own continuous improvement process, right? It's almost like putting a line in the sand, so to speak, and saying, hey, VAMS gave us this great workflow solution, and we have, we stuck our flag in the sand, and here we go. Well, often what we find, and it's great, is 6 months later, the client's saying, hey, you know what? We didn't realize that because of VAMS, we kind of had this bottleneck over here, and we were able to fix it, and we adapted the workflow, and we changed, and we improved that process even better than when we had first started 6 months prior. So it's a very, once again, scalable and adaptable solution. And I think that tends to be the theme. Clients are constantly improving upon their tool. We kind of help get them on this pathway to continuous improvement through having such a flexible workflow tool.
So one of the things that we already teased at the very beginning of our discussion was these user group meetings. And you've said this a couple of times as we've talked, really designing VAMS through the lens of the client. And so as you and I were talking leading up to this interview, these user group meetings were really critical to the success of instituting that philosophy. Like you could say, we're doing this and a client calls us and says they have this problem. And so then we tweak it and fix it. What you're saying is you're actually bringing together a meeting of the minds to really have a structured environment to continue the development and guide that process of making the VAMS solution either broader or that much more refined in how it's supporting your clients. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a user group that I love working with our users. Quite frankly, work with our users all year long, always asking them, hey, is VAMS meeting your needs? What are we missing, right? But we do formalize that twice a year by having 2 user group meetings per year, all run virtually these days, right? But what's great about the user group is just that, like you were alluding to, we get to hear really what the client needs and what the client wants VAMS to be able to do. It's great for myself or a group of developers to come up with some great ideas. And we can think we have the greatest ideas in the world, but it's really the end user and the clients that really come up with the gems. And sometimes they may be the simplest of ideas, and they're so simplistic in their approach and idea that they become the most impactful when we make those changes and add them into the VAMS tool. So we've really learned that it doesn't have to be a grandioso idea that helps improve the VAMS product. It can be those simple things that really helps out the client and makes their day just a little bit easier, that really kind of fuels off our fire when it comes to the meeting with the various users.
So let's throw out some detailed features that, really distinguish the VAMS solution as well. What, in addition to this workflow automation, and that might even be hard for some people to conceptualize, as we're talking through it, but there are some components of this in addition to that automation that I think anybody could really anchor on and see where this builds some efficiencies. What are some examples of those?
Sure. There's all kinds of functionality, right? So if we break down workflow just for a moment, workflow is really a set of milestones, right? There's a start, a middle, and an end to a workflow. And VAMS has a real flexible customization feature to it where you can have multiple milestones. You may have a set of milestones and workflow set just for new product requests. But guess what? Strategic sourcing may have their own set of milestones and a workflow that goes along with that. So VAMS has this workflow/milestone component feature to it. If we take that a little bit deeper, within each milestone and workflow deliverable, there's a set of deliverables, and those could be tasks. There's a task management functionality built into the VAMS tool. There's a checklist functionality built in. A lot of these project management 101, I would call, functionalities that are built in all around the workflow itself. So we can project manage any type of project, whether it's a new product request or a cost savings initiative or a contract renewal, you name it, any type of supply chain project can be project managed and workflow from beginning to end with full visibility, with team visibility. as well as a lot of other functionalities. We have some interoperability with the PO data. So clients can send us their PO data on a monthly basis. And if they so choose to track line items on a monthly basis, they can start to track line item detail on a monthly basis. Did we save the money that we expected to save by going from $10 per unit down to $8? Well, let's track that. And you can track that within the products module of the VAMS tool. So all kinds of different really cool functionalities built into the tool. If on the value analysis side, if they're looking to do product evaluation, for lack of a better term, there's a SurveyMonkey type of functionality built into VAMS where the user can create a product evaluation, send it out electronically to evaluators, and VAMS will help manage that whole product evaluation process. So all kinds of different functionalities I could go on here, but we'd probably run out of time. But some really great functionalities that are built into the tool. So I think if the value analysis folks are looking to do A, B, C, and D, there's kind of a menu of those top functionalities that value analysis professionals are looking to do. VAMS has that. On the supply chain sourcing side, there are certain features that those folks are looking for, tracking, like I just mentioned, tracking of PO data, things like that. So VAMS really has kind of runs the gamut of various functionalities built into the tool itself.
And you mentioned interoperability along the way as you were talking about some of those features and benefits of the solution. And we had an awesome interview with Vin Matozo a while back about interoperability, and just getting all these pieces to work together, I think is so critical. I want to tell everybody or read some testimonials from customers that you've worked with. There's a children's hospital in Texas that says, prior to VAMS implementation, the supply chain and value analysis teams for our client were relying on emails and spreadsheets for management of their new product request activities. Decision-making and communication to those that need resolutions were disjointed. But after installing VAMS, they were able to vastly improve speed to decision and expedite communication with key stakeholders. And as a result of that success, the pharmacy team jumped at an opportunity to utilize VAMS for its formulary management team. The pharmacy team now has a streamlined process from beginning to end, with pharmacy operations accepting all new pharmaceutical requests from its physicians through VAMS. And today, that team manages every step of their decision process, from due diligence, committee review, and the final decision that follows through to the actual final implementation. Here's a couple of other short ones. An 11-hospital system in the Mid-Atlantic region, VAMS helped us simplify the chaotic decision-making process. A 341-bed medical center in the Northwest, we were relying heavily on paper-based operation system. VAMS is now our one true resource sharing hub. And finally, a 3-hospital system in the Northeast, VAMS is now our unified program with the least amount of effort and time. So I think all of those came from different perspectives of your clients, Stephen, in terms of the value that they received, and that really emphasized the conversation that we were having about moving from this more manual process into something that has technology. But I thought that first one from the Children's Hospital and how they saw this application of the tool they had already implemented to have that application for the pharmacy team is just a great example of the flexibility and how I think you were describing all along, clients see new opportunities for the workflow management.
Those are great examples there where different clients are using it for diverse reasons and having similar success stories around utilization of the tool. So great example there with Children's Hospital using VAMS for their P&T, their pharmacy team. Great success. They love it. And we were able to take a look at that operation and assist them in the things that they know best on the pre-implementation, those various steps that they need to take on pre-implementation, then have their meetings through the meeting management function of VAMS, make defendable decisions. And then after the decisions are made, actually utilizing that pharmacy team utilizes VAMS as an implementation tool with various tasks for implementation to actually get those various NDCs actually implemented throughout their system. So really, once again, diverse use of VAMS is something that I love. I'm passionate about. I just love the idea of each client using VAMS just a little bit differently and creatively, and being able to have a success story around that.
All right. Well, if you want to learn more, you can visit the website. Just go to www.dataLeverageGroup.com. They're also on LinkedIn, so just search for Data Leverage Group. And we're also going to have some bonus content on our smartphone app. So just download the Power Supply smartphone app and click on the gift box for this episode, and you'll be able to get some information about VAMS and the solution. Stephen, you did an amazing job in this interview today, but even more amazing in the way that you developed a flexible, sustainable, and scalable solution that can have broad application for healthcare organizations out there. I want to just ask you before we wrap, where are you headed with the company?
That's a great question. We're taking VAMS over the coming years down that workflow path. We're seeing more and more industries driving towards workflow and the prominence and need for workflow in both outside of industry, but also within the healthcare industry as well. Workflow is so much more prominent, and VAMS is really looking to become the leader, that flexible, adaptable workflow tool leader in our industry, specifically within supply chain.
Well, I'll tell you, Stephen, with everything that we know that is going to be going on continuously around the workforce and the labor workforce, automation is going to be so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really feel like we've sold VAMS short over the past 5 years. And as we're starting to see exactly what you just articulated there, the move of the workforce to being more disparate, off-site, different locations, the more there's this need for a workflow platform like VAMS. And we're really excited about taking VAMS to the next level and really making VAMS that workflow platform that all organizations in healthcare can really capitalize on and take advantage of.
Wonderful. You've done a great job. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much.
That was Stephen Kinsella, president at Data Leverage Group, LLC. And we really ended that on the fact that there is a workforce shortage, that workforce shortage is probably going to be around for a while. And everybody knows that not only workflow automation is going to be key to the success of all kinds of organizations, whether you're in healthcare or not, and interoperability, so that not having to do that manual effort from one piece to another to be able to execute that workflow. So the VAMS solution, as Stephen talked about today, really does allow you to go from that manual process to something that is electronic. And I love that term, codifying the workflows of their clients. And I think a huge value in the way that they just go and do business are these user group meetings, so that when they say that VAMS was developed through the lens of the client, well, they mean it, because twice a year they get their clients together to talk about, no matter how big or small an improvement might be, what is going to make this solution do more for their organization, for their teams, and simplify the process with less busy work throughout that value analysis process. So great job today, Stephen. Thank you for coming on the show. And that's going to do it for this vendor spotlight on Power Supply. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to Power Supply on Apple, Amazon, or Google Podcasts. You can also find us on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or your favorite podcast application. And as we mentioned for this episode, we've got bonus content, but you got to download our smartphone app for iPhone or Android. And while you're there, we'd appreciate a rating and review because your feedback is important to the show. Thank you for listening to this Vendor Spotlight on Power Supply.